Princess Diana's letters to her family's former housekeeper are going on sale at auction next week.
27 years. That's how long it took for King Charles to uncover the truth buried beneath Diana's jewelry box. A secret he never expected, one that would shatter everything he thought he knew about their love, their marriage, and the daughter he never knew existed. But the real question is, was this revelation a final act of love or an unforgettable betrayal? It was the morning of March 15th, 2024. Buckingham Palace, as majestic and grand as ever, was quieter than usual. King Charles III sat alone in his study, his hands trembling as he opened the day's mail. Amidst the official letters and diplomatic notes, one package stood out, wrapped in faded blue paper with elegant, flowing script on the label. Your Majesty. Charles recognized that handwriting. His heart skipped a beat. He hadn't seen it in years. It was Diana's. Was this a sign from the past, or was it something that would force him to face a reality he wasn't ready to confront? The memories of their years together, those tender moments, the pain, the betrayal, came rushing back. He opened the package, his breath catching. Inside was Diana's jewelry box. Not the grand pieces worn at state events, but a more intimate collection, the kind she kept hidden away for herself. A piece of their past, preserved. But what was more chilling was the note attached to it. He unfolded the paper, his hands shaking. But what was inside the jewelry box was far more than just a collection of precious stones. Charles stared at the jewelry box, his mind racing. It looked like it had been carefully preserved, just as he remembered it. Elegant, understated, with the Spencer family crest embossed in gold on the lid. He hesitated for a moment, as if the box itself might hold the answers to questions he'd spent years pushing away. But the note, that was the real mystery. With trembling hands, he carefully opened the envelope. The words on the cream-colored paper were unmistakable. Diana's handwriting, clear, delicate, and intimate. It felt as if she was speaking directly to him, across the years, across the distance that had grown between them. His heart pounded as he read.
My dearest Charles, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have finally learned what I always knew, that beneath all our pain and public battles, we never stopped loving each other. This box contains the truth I could never tell you while I lived. Open it when you're ready to remember who we were before the world demanded we become something else. The king's breath caught in his chest. Diana had always been so guarded with her emotions, hiding behind the public persona of the wounded ex-wife. But this was different. This was the Diana he had loved, before the media, before the royal duties, before the walls of duty and expectation had encased them both. The box was more than just a collection of jewels. It was a key to something deeper. But what Diana had written in her final message was only the beginning. There was something else hidden in the box, something that would change everything. As Charles lifted the lid of the jewelry box, the faint scent of jasmine and roses filled the air, the unmistakable fragrance of Diana's signature perfume. It instantly transported him back to their early years together, those rare, quiet moments of happiness before duty took its toll on their relationship. The smell was so familiar, so comforting, but it was the contents of the box that would shatter his world. Beneath the delicate pieces of jewelry, something caught his eye. An envelope tucked into the corner, hidden beneath the silk lining. His heart began to race as he pulled it out, his hands trembling more than before. The envelope was different from the one with the first letter. This one looked hastily written, urgent, and the ink appeared smudged, as if Diana had been crying as she wrote it. The date on the paper was August 29th, 1997. Just 2 days before Diana's tragic death. The words she had left for him were more than just a final confession. They were a revelation that Charles had never expected to hear. Charles, I'm leaving for Paris tonight, but I had to tell you the truth before I go. The baby, the one I lost in December 1985, wasn't from my affair with James. It was yours, our third child. Our daughter. Charles's vision blurred as the words hit him like a physical blow. A daughter? Diana had carried the secret for over a decade, and he had never known. His heart ached as he read further, struggling to process the devastating truth.
The revelation sent a ripple of shock through him. The loss of their child. He never knew. But there was more to the story. More that Diana had kept hidden for all these years. The words swirled in Charles's mind as he read on. Our third child. Our daughter. It was almost too much to comprehend. The child they had lost, the one Diana had carried silently, had been theirs, a secret kept hidden in the depths of their troubled marriage. A daughter. He never knew. His heart felt like it was breaking all over again, this time for a life that could have been, a daughter he would never meet. The note continued, detailing the events surrounding that painful miscarriage. Diana had written about the emotional turmoil she faced in 1985, how she had kept the secret because she feared it would drive Charles further away. She had believed their marriage was already too far gone, too shattered, and she couldn't bear to burden him with another child that might be rejected, just like the love they had lost. I couldn't tell you then. You were so distant, so cold after Harry's birth. You'd already decided our marriage was a mistake, and I couldn't bear to trap you with another child you might resent. But I loved her, Charles. For the 3 months I carried her, I loved her with everything I had. Tears welled up in Charles's eyes as he read these words. He had never known how much pain Diana had endured, how much she had silently suffered alone, even while they both tried to move on in different ways. The pain of losing a child, the agony of a secret kept for so long, it all crashed over him. And then came the most painful part. I named her Elizabeth Rose, Diana's note read, after your mother and my middle name. I had a small funeral service at Althorpe, just me and the priest. She's buried in the Spencer family cemetery under a stone that simply says, Beloved Daughter. I visit her every year on what would have been her birthday, December 23rd. Charles's chest tightened as he tried to absorb the reality of it all. He had lost a daughter, his daughter, a loss he had never known about, one Diana had kept to herself, hidden from the public eye and from him. The sorrow overwhelmed him, but there was more. Something else hidden in the jewelry box that would push him even further into a truth he wasn't prepared to face. Charles's hands trembled as he reached deeper into the jewelry box. Beneath the note, tucked carefully under the silk lining, was a small velvet pouch. His heart pounded as he lifted it, his mind racing with the weight of the discoveries already made. Inside, nestled delicately, was a locket. It wasn't large or grand, but it caught the light in a way that made it impossible to ignore. He held it in his palm, his breath catching as he slowly opened it. What he saw inside made his chest constrict with grief. On one side of the locket was a photograph of him and Diana, young and hopeful, from their engagement days. The smile on their faces told a story of love one they had both believed in at the time. But when he turned the locket over, his heart stopped.
There, engraved in the fragile gold, was an ultrasound image, faded, grainy, and old, but unmistakable, a clear profile of their unborn daughter, Elizabeth Rose, the child they had lost, the child he never knew about. Charles pressed the locket to his chest, overwhelmed by a surge of emotions he couldn't control. For years, he had assumed the pain of their marriage's collapse was the result of external forces, the press, public opinion, and the pressures of royal life. But now as he held this locket in his hands, he realized that Diana had carried far deeper pain, pain he had never known. The tears fell freely now, no longer held back by the years of duty, the years of pretending that he had no regrets. Diana had loved him, and this locket, the symbol of their lost daughter, was the proof. But there was more. The locket wasn't the only thing Diana had left for him. Beneath the locket, hidden in the corner of the box, lay a final letter, one marked with the words, "Read this last." Diana's last secret, one that would change everything Charles thought he knew about her. Charles's hands shook violently as he carefully unfolded the last letter from Diana, marked with the words, "Read this last." His heart was already heavy with the secrets he had just uncovered, but this final piece of her message threatened to crush him completely. He had thought he knew everything about their marriage, every public argument, every private betrayal. But this letter, this was the truth Diana had never given him. The letter began in Diana's familiar handwriting, but the words were different from the ones before. This was not a confession, but a final plea, a final reflection of everything she had lived through, everything she had wanted to say. "Charles, I know that by the time you read this, I will be gone, but there's something you need to know, something I've carried with me for so long that I couldn't live with it any longer. Our story, the one the world knows, is not the full story. Yes, we had our troubles, our heartaches, but underneath it all, I never stopped loving you. I never stopped believing in us." The words were like a balm to the wounds Charles had carried for so many years, but they also opened up a new kind of pain, a pain that came from the realization that this was the Diana he had never fully understood. The Diana who had stayed in a marriage she felt was doomed, the Diana who had suffered in silence, and the Diana who had secretly hoped for a future they could never have. But there was more, so much more, and as Charles read on, he found himself unable to breathe.
"I know about the letters you wrote to me after our separation, the ones you never sent. Edward found them in your desk. All those apologies, those declarations of love and regret. Why didn't you send them, Charles? Why didn't we both choose truth over pride?" The king's vision blurred. He had written those letters, those heartfelt apologies, but pride and duty had kept him from ever sending them. Now, reading Diana's words, he understood the weight of what he had lost, and how pride had kept them both trapped in a cycle of misunderstanding and missed opportunities. Diana's words were haunting, but they weren't over yet. There was more to this letter, something about their final moments together that would change everything he thought he knew about her death. Charles's heart beat wildly as he read on. He was already overwhelmed by the depth of Diana's words, but this next revelation left him breathless. Diana had not only written about their past, she had written about their future, the future they could have had if only fate had been kinder. "I've been thinking a lot about us, Charles, about what could have been if we had fought for each other instead of against each other. We both made mistakes. I exposed our pain to the world when I should have protected us. I hurt you, and I'm sorry for that." The words felt like a knife in his chest, but as he read further, something else emerged, a glimmer of hope, a flicker of a life that could have been different. "I've made a decision. I'm going to call off my relationship with Dodi. It was never real, just another attempt to make you jealous, to prove to myself that I could move on. But the truth is, I can't move on from us, Charles. I don't want to. I'm coming back to you." The king's breath caught in his throat. Diana had planned to return to him, away from the press, away from the expectations of the royal family. She had been ready to try again. But fate intervened. As Charles wiped his tears away, the next part of the letter shattered everything he thought he knew about her death. Diana's trip to Paris had not been what it seemed. The words on the page seemed to blur as Charles continued to read. Diana had written about the final trip she took to Paris with Dodi Fayed, a trip that the world had viewed as the next chapter in her life, after her tumultuous marriage to Charles. But what Diana had kept hidden, what she had never told anyone, was that this trip was not what it seemed. "Charles, if something happens to me in Paris, I need you to know this trip isn't what the press says. Yes, I'm with Dodie, but it's not for the reasons you think." The words felt like a punch to the gut. The entire narrative of Diana's life after their divorce, the media frenzy, the supposed romance with Dodie, was a facade. The truth was far more complex, far more desperate than anyone had realized. 3 weeks ago, I received information about our daughter, Elizabeth Rose. Someone knows about her, about the miscarriage I never told you. They're threatening to expose it unless I disappear from public life permanently. If I don't, they will release everything: the pregnancy, the loss, and the fact that you never knew. They'll paint you as indifferent, a husband who turned his back when your wife needed you most.
Charles sat back, stunned. His mind reeled as he processed the shocking truth. Diana hadn't been in Paris to move on, to start a new life. She had been there under duress, trying to protect their family from a scandal that could have ruined everything. She had been trying to shield him, to protect the royal family from the fallout of a secret that had haunted her for years. "I told them I need time to think," the letter continued. "Paris is my cover, my place to plan, to protect what we built, even if we built it imperfectly." The realization hit him like a wave. Diana had not just been protecting herself or even their marriage. She had been protecting him, the monarchy, and their children from a threat that would have torn everything apart. The woman he had once blamed for tearing their family apart had in fact been fighting to protect it. But there was still one more part of the letter that would make everything Charles thought he knew about Diana's death unravel. The shocking reason behind her final trip to Paris was not yet fully revealed. Charles continued reading, each word sinking deeper into his chest as the truth about Diana's final months began to unfold in front of him. He had never known the full extent of her struggle, the weight of the decisions she had made in the final weeks of her life. "Dodie knows nothing," Diana had written. "Paris is my cover, my place to plan, to protect what we built, even if we built it imperfectly." The weight of her words was unbearable. Charles had thought that their marriage was completely over, that Diana had moved on, that she had found happiness with someone else. But now he saw the truth. The entire relationship with Dodie had been a facade, an attempt to make Charles jealous, to force him to see what he had lost. Diana had never stopped loving him. Even after everything they had been through, after the pain, the public humiliation, the separation, she had still held on to the hope that they could rebuild what they once had. "I've been thinking about what we could be, Charles, if we set aside the palace protocols, the public expectations, not as the king and his ex-wife, but as Charles and Diana, two people who made mistakes but never stopped loving each other. Two people who created beautiful children together and could create a beautiful life together if we're brave enough to try." The king's heart broke again as he read these words. Diana had been ready to come back, ready to fight for them, ready to heal the wounds of the past. She had been planning to meet him privately, away from the eyes of the world, to start fresh. But she never got the chance. "I'm planning to end things with Dodie. I'll come back to you. I'll come home. I'll fight for us." And then the letter revealed something that sent a chill down Charles's spine. Diana had arranged a secret meeting, a meeting that was to take place just days after her return from Paris. "I've arranged to meet you in private, a quiet place, away from the public eye. Just us. No staff, no security,
Just you and me talking about our future. Charles felt a wave of regret wash over him. This meeting never happened. Diana was planning to come back, to seek forgiveness, to rebuild their life together. But fate had stepped in, and she never had the chance to make that call.
As Charles read on, the last pages of the letter revealed something far more chilling, something that could change the course of royal history forever. Charles's hands were shaking as he read the final lines of Diana's letter. His heart was heavy with the weight of everything he had just learned. The truth about their marriage, about the love they had shared, and about the daughter he never knew they had lost, was all laid bare before him. But there was one more secret, one more revelation that would forever change everything he thought he knew about her death. Diana had written about the final meeting she had arranged for September 1st, 1997, just days after she returned from Paris. The meeting was set to take place at the private chapel in Windsor Castle, with no staff, no security, just the two of them. She had asked a trusted intermediary, Sir Robert Fellows, to facilitate it. "I know I have no right to ask for another chance after everything I put you through," Diana's letter read. "But I also know that behind all our pain and pride, something real still exists between us, something worth saving." Charles's heart tightened. She had been ready to meet him, ready to lay everything bare, to face the past and rebuild what they had lost. This was the moment he had longed for, an opportunity to start again, to put aside the years of hurt, the distance, and the misunderstandings. But tragically, Diana never had the chance to make that meeting. She never had the chance to come back to him. Charles read the final lines of her letter with tears streaming down his face. The love they had shared, the love she had never stopped fighting for, had ended in the most tragic way. "I'm terrified you'll reject me, Charles, but I'm more terrified of never trying. I love you. I never stopped loving you." The king sat in his study, the letter clutched in his hands, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. He had spent so many years living with the regret of what he had lost, and now he knew that Diana had been carrying a burden of her own, a burden she had kept hidden, even from him. She had never stopped loving him. She had never stopped hoping for a chance to rebuild their life together. But now that chance was gone, and all that was left were the secrets Diana had kept, the love they had lost, and the painful knowledge that they would never have the chance to try again. With the final revelation in Diana's letter, the truth was out, but the question remained, what would Charles do with this information? Would he share these devastating secrets with the world, or would he keep them locked away, preserving Diana's memory as a final act of love?